Tonight is July 16th, 2014. My name is Matt Smith. I'm sitting here with my friend Aaron Tester, and he has a story to tell us about cave exploration within the Mammoth Cave area of Kentucky. I'm hoping that not only do we get to learn new things, but we get to have a new appreciation. So, Aaron, tell us what you have.
So, I spent about a week on expedition at Mammoth Cave. I do this periodically. And I'm a member of the Cave Research Foundation. It's an awful lot of fun. And I spent the July 4th expedition, did several trips, and the last one I did was probably the most impressive but most difficult trip I've ever taken. So, in case for those who don't know, Mammoth Cave is about 409 miles long, so it's the longest cave system in the world.
Which state is this in?
This is in the state of Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Yes, the land of bourbon and horses.
Horses.
Horses. Anyway, so within Mammoth Cave National Park, we've got several caves that are actually not connected to the main cave system, and one of them is called Great Onyx. Used to be a commercial cave until the 1970s when it was finally closed down, and it has not yet been connected into the whole Mammoth Cave system. So it's about 36 miles long, and they have been working on this. Actually, the last push to make the connection was back on July 4th, and they came within about 200 feet before everybody got too cold and miserable.
So a push is simply another word for an expedition.
Well, the push is more for, we know that it most likely connects in a particular area, and come hell or high water, we're going to look for every way possible to push that connection.
Okay.
So, a little bit before the July 4th expedition, when they attempted to make the connection, I had the pleasure of going into Great Onyx Cave with Dave West, Ben Hirota, and Mark Jones. Now, Ben Hirota is a 19-year-old student from Japanese. He was an intern from Japan. He was an intern, has never been caving before.
So you took a new caver to do a new push through an old cave that you thought was going to connect to the Mammoth.
Yes, but we weren't looking to make the connection into Mammoth Cave on this particular trip.
You were just looking to do more of your surveying.
Yes.
Okay.
So this was a survey from the 1970s that the sketch was never done. We have no vertical control, which means pretty much that we have no idea of the relationship and elevation from one cave passage to the next. And also all of the data was lost. So when we take a look at the map, we had this big blank spot with some lines that were the plot on the computer for the survey, but the rest of the data was lost.
So how does the data get lost? Would it be in a filing error? Would it be in something as...
Yes, actually, all of the above. It could have been, it was never filed, it was never scanned, never recorded, never actually input into our computer system, or somebody decided to quotes around misplaced the notes.
So you're going into a cave that has technically been explored, but you're going into it blind.
Yes, it has never been, as far as we are concerned, it's never been documented.
How do you prepare yourself to be able to go into something as intense as what you're describing, but yet you're going in completely blind, particularly with other people and a new caver?
Well, one of the gentlemen, Dave West, who was leading our particular expedition, he's been there before, back in the 1970s.
So this is an older gentleman.
So he's an older gentleman. Yes, he's 66.
Wow.
Yes. So, I mean, we've got people who are even in their 70s who are still doing this. So he had been there before. He was able to get the survey notes of the area just around it, not actually the part that we were going to resurvey. That's what we refer to going back in and redocumenting, taking the degrees north, the vertical angle, and actually doing a sketch. So we call that resurvey. So he had been there before, and we were basically trying to finish up that resurvey so that it was done, complete. We had a sketch, and we could complete that part of the map. And then the other gentleman, Mark Jones, he's in his 40s or so, kind of a short, stocky Welsh gentleman. He had never been in that area before, but very, very familiar with how caving is done within the Mammoth Cave system. But then we've got Ben Hirota, who was the intern from Japan, barely spoke English, and pretty much he was at our mercy. It was just, he had to put his complete faith in us that we were going to get him in, get him out without him becoming injured or getting lost or worse.
That sounds like an incredible experience, not only for Hirota, but for all of you. Especially for you as well, because you're going in with two other gentlemen who have either been there before or who have absolute years of experience behind them.
And this is only my second expedition with Mammoth, or with the Cave Research Foundation. So, I mean, it's pretty nerve-wracking for me to go into something that I am not familiar with what I'm going to be doing. So, and actually, to get into it, so the part of the cave that we were going into is only 15 minutes away from the entrance. So going through tight, narrow, twisting canyons that are really, when I say canyon, that talks about what the shape of the passage is, but not really its size. The average size of the passageway was about 12 inches to about 18 inches wide, and maybe only 2 feet high at the most.
And this is all underground.
This is all underground. So we are laying on our sides, trying to keep our packs from falling into the crack below us. The crack doesn't really go down all that far, but it is really annoying when your pack gets wedged down in a crack and you're trying to keep yourself out of it, pull the pack out of it, and then you're trying to do these tight S-turns where you have to put one arm forward and turn your head to the side in order to fit through.
About how big are your packs just in general for this trip?
My pack was actually way too big for what I was doing. I was carrying maybe about 10 to 15 pounds when really what I needed to be carrying was something in the neighborhood of about 6. So yes, I was over-prepared. Originally we were supposed to go into a different part of the cave system, but then they changed their minds at the last minute. Mostly because the passages in the original cave, which is Crystal Cave, were too small for our party. So the one gentleman, Mark Jones, he's a pretty hefty guy, he would not have been able to fit. So as we're going through all of these narrow, tight, twisty canyons, and then periodically we'd come out over a pit, which is just a drop to the floor. And those drops were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 feet to 40 feet, depending upon where we were.
Damn.
So we're going along and we're stepping on ledges very gingerly, trying to stay up and not fall down some of these deep holes. And we finally worked our way through, across all of those pits, through those tight, narrow passageways, across formations called popcorn, which were breaking underneath of us, and we're trying not to break those formations because they are delicate. And then finally, we end up in the bottom of this silo, which is about 45 feet tall. So basically, it's like standing at the bottom of a big shaft that just goes 45 feet up into the ceiling. So Dave West, the leader of our party, looks at me and he says, "I understand that you're a good climber. So I'm going to give you a piece of webbing that is 100 feet long, and I want you to climb 45 feet up into the ceiling, up through the crack you can see up there, and then tie it off and drop that down as a hand line for the rest of us to climb up." So I say to him,
that's a pretty tall order, especially because you were going in there knowing that you had the injured knee,
right,
with the overloaded pack.
Right. So pretty much I said to him, "Who said that I'm a good climber?" And he says, "It was somebody on a previous expedition that you were on, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus for this. So, but go ahead and give it a shot. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't." So I start climbing up, and I make it about 25 to 30 feet up off the floor. And I just cannot reach my next handheld, which is about maybe 4 inches too far away.
How are you making it up there? Were you mostly just going by pressure shafting, or?
Yes, so it's a combination of actually climbing, finding foot and handholds, and then also chimneying up. So you don't have any obvious handholds, and you're just jamming in any part of your body that you possibly can, and by pressure, holding yourself up.
And this is with your pack on?
This is actually not with my pack on. My pack is down at the floor at this point because our plan was once I had made it up through the crack, I would have tied off the hand line, and then we would have taken a carabiner, attached all of the other packs, and then I would have hauled them up to the top.
Okay.
Right. Anyway, so I make it about 25 to 30 feet up off the floor. My next handhold is just too far away, and I'm not able to make it. So I apologized to Dave and everybody else, and I climbed back down, and he said, okay, well, give me a few minutes to climb through, or to crawl through this passageway where a stream is, and I'll get cold and wet, but I will be able to get up to where we're going. Because eventually, we all had to go up that 45 feet.
Mhm.
Mark Jones, the short, stocky Welsh guy, turned around and said, let me give this a shot. I'm feeling pretty enthusiastic. So, by all means, go for it. So he makes it up to the point where I got, and he said, Aaron, I can see exactly what you're talking about. He said, however, I think I can make it up. I've got a handhold behind me, which was the part that I missed, was to look behind me on the wall. And then I'm going to put my feet where my hands are. Now, putting your feet where your hands are is this weird acrobatic move of pretty much you take your knees and you start jamming them into the walls.
Ouch.
Yes, which definitely for me with my knee. You can jam your knees into the walls, and then pretty much you end up putting your left foot, or in his case, he put his left foot right next to his left hand. And then he was able to actually stand up, bridge across, to get up to the next handhold. So he was finally able to make it up. It was a daring climb, I have to say. I was very impressed with his skill. And I definitely learned a thing or two about how to do this.
Sounds like he was quite the bold climber.
Yes, he was bold. Well, like all Welshmen, he was bold. Anyway, so
We would just like to let everybody know who listens into this program that we are not making any sort of general racial nor ethnic stereotypes when it comes to this. We're just talking briefly.
Oh no, the Welsh are awesome. I'm part Welsh. I wish I took after that bold Welshness. Anyway, just no Welshing. No takebacks. Anyway,
Welshing.
no Welshing. Anyway, so he takes some time, he ties off the hand line and drops it down, and then we all climb up, or I'm the next person up. And then Ben Hirota, again, remember, this 19-year-old kid from Japan.
How is his English, by the way? Or was?
It's not very good at all. Like, we had to restate some of our things that we asked him maybe 4 or 5 times in order for us to get just the right word combination for him to understand what we meant. And he barely said a word during the entire trip. So Ben Hirota, however, put his faith into us, and he made it up no problem. I mean, it was really, really impressive. And we pretty much all told him that when he gets back to Japan, he needs to brag to his friends that he did this, because he's doing things that a lot of beginning cavers would never do on their first trip, or even on their 10th trip. I mean, it was really, really impressive.
It definitely sounds pretty intense, but to
So
continue.
we get back into the narrow, tight, twisting canyons covered in gypsum.
This is after.
This is after the climb up.
All right, and how did you all get up that silo?
We all got up to the silo through using that hand line, basically. It's just a safety. I mean, you're still relying on pressure moves and chimneying up and climbing up, but just in case you need that extra help, you've got that hand line for you to wrap your arm around.
Okay.
So we go into the series of tight, twisty canyons up above that silo, and we begin the survey. And I'm on point, so I'm the person going out with the measuring tape. I've got the dumb end, and then Mark Jones is reading off all of the different compass bearings and the angles. And finally, after going through maybe about 30 feet of this tight, twisty stuff, my voice starts to echo up ahead of me. And that's much different in sound than being in a tight canyon. So I let everybody know, I'm like, guys, okay, look, something changes up ahead of us, and it's big. Okay, well, we'll continue surveying up until we get to that point. We finally get there, and I'm like, guys, we're not going any further. The floor drops 45 feet down. Well, can you chimney down? Absolutely not.
So you had just climbed up the shaft. You chimneyed up the shaft with the hand line.
Yep.
About 45 feet.
Yes.
you continued over and there was another drop
Of
the
about
equivalent
45
amount.
feet. Yes.
That's insane.
So, I'm like, okay, well, I can't get down there, but there's a crack in the ceiling up above me. I'm going to see if I can actually fit through, because it looks like it's all the same space. So I shove my pack through at that point. I shove my helmet through, and then I have to exhale all of the air out of my lungs and just kind of wriggle, trying to fit through, because I've got solid ceiling on my back and solid ceiling on my chest. So after an awful lot of effort, maybe about 5-10 minutes, I actually pop into this big, huge space. The ceiling takes off 35 feet up. That floor is still 45 feet below. And I'm like, okay, guys, we're in a huge dome. We're in a huge pit. This is awesome. So they take their time working in. Mark Jones, the Welshman, he took about 20 minutes to try to fit into the room. But he's bigger than me. There was no way he could actually fit. And finally, he said, well, I'm feeling enthusiastic, which kind of seemed to be his phrase for the day. And he chimneyed out over that 45-foot drop and then climbed back over on himself in order to get onto the ledge where I was.
That sounds mildly insane.
Crazy, because if the guy took a fall, there was no way we were going to get him out of there. There was no way to rescue him.
I'm pretty sure that whatever caving organization that you go through does not recommend that style of boldness.
Well, whatever gets the job done, right? Anyway, because, come hell or high water, we needed to check out the leads that were up in this area. And leads are potential passages that go off that have never been explored.
So you're right now in completely virgin territory.
Not virgin, but undocumented.
So this has already been explored, but nobody has written it because of the lost files.
Correct.
Well, this is
To
pretty
a point.
intense.
Anyway, so Mark Jones, he gets up in there. Ben Hirota, who's skinnier than me, had absolutely no problem getting into the room. And then Dave West finally pops up behind. And at this point, we decided, okay, this is time to actually take a break, have lunch. So eating cold beanie weenies out of a can and canned fruit. We're all sitting around shooting the shit, except for Ben Hirota.
And this is completely in darkness.
Oh, yes.
About how many feet underground would you think that you were?
By this point, we were probably about 90 feet below the surface. Earlier on, though, we were about 150 to 175 below the surface.
So at this point, with the new dome, with the new shaft, you're looking at being how many feet?
About 90 feet below the surface.
So you're about 90 feet below the surface with 45 feet opening either way.
Correct.
And you're sitting in complete darkness in otherwise non-explored territory eating beanie weenies for lunch.
Correct.
This is great.
Anyway, so, we finally, look over at Ben Hirota, who's just kind of sitting there shell-shocked. We're like, okay, Ben, how would you describe this to your friends if you were to go back to Japan right now? How would you describe this space to your friends? So he sits there kind of thoughtfully, and then you can see he's translating over into Japanese. And finally he says, Maji sugoi.
Maji sugoi.
Maji sugoi. We're like, okay, well, what does that mean? It means extremely awesome.
At least that's what he told
That's
you.
at least what he told us. Well, next thing we know, Dave West is sitting there and he's like, how do you spell this? And he's like, Machesugoi? We're like, no, Majisugoi. We finally got the spelling down afterward. But the really cool thing is that here you've got this 19-year-old who's never been caving before, from Japan, barely speaks English, and he names this new part of the cave that had never been documented. So it is now officially known as Majisugoi Dome.
And this is within not only the organization which you explore in, but it's also the other organizations which come in
Right.
and come see it. So he laid claim to this new cave because these three crazy guys took him in this spot that he never thought he was going to be in.
Yep.
And you just happened to find new territory.
And we asked him, I was like, what would you call this? How would you describe this? Majisugoi.
That is incredible.
That's awesome. Anyway, so we find a ledge, go along around the outside of this deep pit that goes down 45 feet, and we added only 40 feet to Great Onyx Cave. But it is 40 additional feet. There are a few more leads. I couldn't fit through one of them because my butt was too big. But we're definitely going to come back with some skinnier people and a bolting kit and vertical gear, and we'll end up pushing the new leads that are off of that room. And Ben Hirota, by the way, he did make it out of the cave perfectly safely. He was scared shitless coming down the 45-foot dome,
Which
or the
can be
45-foot
imagined.
silo. On the way out, he was definitely shaken. And I got the honor of leading everybody out and only got turned around a couple times. So,
About how long would you say you were underground in this cave exploration event?
on that particular expedition, we were underground about 8 hours.
8 hours.
Correct.
So
In
4
order to
one
get
way,
into an
4
area,
back.
in order to get into an area that was only supposed to be 15 minutes away from the entrance.
Because of the lost data.
Because
and
of the lost data doing the survey work, but also because these passages are particularly tight and narrow.
Wow.
So it's a lot of work. You work up an awful lot of sweat, and you definitely look forward to the times when you can actually just lay down on the ground, or well, actually just lay down in a passageway. It doesn't matter if you're perfectly flat or not, so you can cool off.
And how does it feel after, say, an 8-hour expedition into new territory, which is either poorly documented, non-documented, or just sketchily documented? How does it feel to come back to the surface after going down 8 hours in, discovering all this new stuff through these tiny passages in complete darkness? How does it feel to come back to the terrestrial world?
Well, as soon as you get into a portion of the cave that is easy for you to travel, and on your way out, you thank the cave for letting you get through safely and uninjured, and then to get up onto the surface, especially this time of year where everything is green and it's much warmer and much more humid outside than it is inside the cave. It's actually really overwhelming.
When you're within the cave, I'm assuming you're taking pictures as well as soundings and
Yes.
uh, any sort of sketching thing. So when you say you're sketching, are you sketching in 3 dimensions? Are you sketching in 2? How does that work with the new territory?
Okay, so when we're sketching, the plan view is actually the most important, and that's basically like if you were to take the top of the mountainside off and you're looking down into the cave passages, so that you could see all of the cave passages, be them overlapped or twisting and turning over each other. So the plan view is all important. And then it's actually a lot where the taking your compass bearings degrees north, it's actually really important. Then we do cross sections, and cross sections are really easy, and that it's easy, but they're still important because they give you an idea of the characteristics of the cave passage. But then we'll do a profile view all the way through, like if you were to cut it vertically and you're looking down the whole thing. And that's really where taking your vertical angle of degrees up or down off of 0 is really important. And that's really what we were missing in this portion of the cave. Besides the sketch, we were missing the vertical angle. Because in order for us to have an idea of where new leads, new passages might be, we need to see that relationship of these passages overlie other passages, or these are underneath and there's flowing water, so that water is going to continue to work its way down. This could lead into a deeper portion of the cave.
So, will any of the sketches and the discoveries that you and your fellow expedition mates made, will those be published in the relative near future, or once other people go in? Or?
They will be published. It's not information that's necessarily publicly available. Mostly our resurvey is because there is the missing data. Mostly it's the vertical angle that just was not recorded between 1954 to the 1980s, really. And the national park has asked us, for an accuracy standpoint, to go back in and resurvey all 409 miles worth of known cave. So it is a huge undertaking that is started back pretty much in the 90s is when they started taking in the vertical angle. So we are actually cleaning that information up. But in the meantime, we're also finding more stuff that was not previously documented or surveyed at all. So there are many more cave passages that actually are left to discover. And actually, I have the opportunity to be on an expedition in September, which is trying to connect the nearby Wigpissel cave system in Martin's Ridge into the Proctor portion of Mammoth Cave.
Well, that's great, and thank you so much for telling the story tonight. It's absolutely mind blowing to think that there's so much undiscovered area, not technically within the United States, but beneath
Yes.
the United States and within national and state parks.
Yep.
So, again, thank you, Aaron. This has been amazing, and I hope that anybody else who listens is as enlightened as I was. We need to drink more scotch, and I hope to have you back here again. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Again, this is my friend Aaron Tester on July 16th, 2014, telling a story about rediscovering a cave area within the Mammoth Cave National Park
Yes.
within Kentucky as he went down for a series of expeditions. Thank you again, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Let's drink some scotch.
Excellent.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
Great.